Welcome to CIO Online. Our special focus today, well, it's all in the title of the event, How to Pay for It, IT Strategies and Trade-offs to Accelerate Digital Transformation. When 80 or 90% of your budget is pre-committed to keeping the lights on, what about the digital transformation? It's the biggest question in digital transformation today. And that is the question we'll be attacking head-on for the next 45 minutes. This is a qualified access only gathering of CIOs and other senior IT, business transformation, and business strategy leaders from large enterprises. Everyone here today is with an at least $500 million company, and we have executives registered from the broadest range of industries. Thank you for joining our meeting. Quick tour of our medium of communication. Click on the tiny arrow at the far right to open a side panel where you can see the questions tab. That's where you type in any questions for our panelists. So as you listen to our speakers, Jack Shaw and Pat Phelan, if you have a question, type it there. You see next to it the polls tab. We have a poll question entered there on our topic already about one significant cost-saving option. It's not too soon for you to answer that poll. Just click on the polls tab anytime during the meeting. And there's the chat tab where you can meet other attendees and expand your professional circle. We call it the CIO Lounge at live events. Stop in, say hi, even if there's nobody there. Stay a while, others will stop in to the chat tab, a place where you can expand your professional circle under the chat tab. I'm Scott Schuster, serving as the moderator. Soon I'll be joined by the great Jack Shaw, longtime and very well-known consultant and futurist, helping giants of industry and government understand and benefit from the arrival of so many new technologies over the years. Jack turns his attention to the challenges we are facing at the moment. Then we're also going to meet Pat Phelan a little later. For 18 years, a Gartner Group Vice President for Research. Vice President leading research that the whole world of enterprise IT relies on in assessing new technologies and the companies that have invented and provide those new technologies. You'll meet Pat Phelan, now in her new role with Rimini Street, later in the program. All right, let me start by telling you about Rimini Street Incorporated, NASDAQ-traded Rimini Street, our sponsor this morning, a global provider of enterprise software products and services, the leading third-party support provider for Oracle and SAP software products, and a Salesforce partner. Rimini Street offers premium, ultra-responsive, integrated application management and support services that enable enterprise software licensees to save significant costs, free up resources for innovation, and achieve better business outcomes. More than 2,000 global Fortune 500, mid-market, public sector, and other organizations from a broad range of industries rely on Rimini Street as their trusted application enterprise software products and services provider. To learn more, please visit RiminiStreet.com, follow Rimini Street on Twitter, and find Rimini Street on Facebook and LinkedIn. And we're grateful to Rimini Street for supporting our meeting this afternoon. All right, let's begin by meeting Jack Shaw. Jack has helped GE, Johnson & Johnson, Coca-Cola, Mercedes-Benz, Bosch, even Oracle, SAP, and IBM in the development of their own conceptual frameworks around how they are going to implement and benefit from the many new arrivals on the enterprise technology scene. And Jack has done this over a span of decades, consultant and futurist. Jack Shaw normally seen only in the hallways of large enterprises, He joins us now. Hi, Jack. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Scott.
Well, I'm going to turn the floor right over to you because I know you have a lot to share. Go ahead.
All right. Thanks, Scott. As an innovation and technology strategist, I'm often asked to make predictions. When I am, I always try to heed the words of that great American philosopher, Yogi Berra, who said, making predictions is very hard, especially about the future. Nevertheless, I'm going to go out on a limb and make a few predictions today. So please join me on a short trip to the near future. In our first scene, a preteen needs orthodontic work, but she and her parents don't just see the nearest orthodontist or one a friend or relative recommends. Instead, they post an online request for proposals that can only be seen by nearby registered orthodontists and receive several such proposals. Each states their qualifications and a suggested treatment plan. After speaking to a couple of orthodontists by phone, she and her parents select one to meet with in person. Once they've reviewed the treatment plan and payment schedule with the orthodontist, they authorize it via digital signatures through their smartphones. The family's healthcare insurance makes progress payments immediately on completion of each visit. The family makes co-payments using their airline frequent flyer miles, and no paperwork is ever required. In our second scene, an aircraft is halfway across the Atlantic when it detects that a critical part must be replaced on arrival. The airline's advanced procurement system scans the internet to identify FAA-certified providers of that particular part. The system negotiates pricing, terms, and conditions, selects a provider, and incorporates the terms into a legally enforceable online smart contract. The part's design is then downloaded. Bear with me a second. The part's design is then downloaded to a 3D printer at the airport, and the part is waiting when the aircraft arrives. In our third scene, a young couple is buying a new home. They start by requesting mortgage approvals from qualified mortgage providers, authorizing them to securely review their online credit histories. Each mortgage provider then responds with approval for a mortgage within a specified purchase price range. The couple then visits houses via virtual reality and selects one they'll go to see in person. On their way, they request a title search, and they ask each mortgage provider to propose a mortgage plan for this specific property. On arrival, they're delighted that the house is just as nice as they had thought. They agree on a purchase price with the seller and select a mortgage plan. Since the title search has been completed by this time, they close the deal on the spot, again, using digital signatures on their smartphones. No paperwork, no brokers, no attorneys. And in fact, no keys are even exchanged, as the house and all its systems are now controlled via their own biometrics, fingerprints, voice prints, facial recognition, and retinal scans. What will make these extraordinary examples of digital transformation possible? Well, a number of technologies come into play: 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, biometrics, and more. These are all part of a suite of emerging technologies that the manufacturing and distribution industries refer to as Industry 4.0. This includes, among other things, robotics, which is increasingly being used to manufacture and handle physical objects, for assembling increasingly complex products, augmenting human performance, and collaborating in troubleshooting, scheduling, and setup. This enables faster setup cycles, instant repurposing, and easy reconfigurations, thereby delivering manufacturing efficiencies once reserved for investments in heavy industrial machinery at much lower cost. Other forms of AI are already addressing numerous aspects of businesses of all kinds. Just imagine AI so clever that they can do things like assign available staff with the greatest efficacy for a particular task, forecast and optimize material inventories, raise a work order and purchase replacement parts securely via blockchain, and even predict sales trends that haven't yet been recognized by people and steer you toward making more of what is selling and what will be selling. Supply chain management has become vastly more efficient over the past 30 to 40 years, but trade wars and the global pandemic have laid bare critical weaknesses in our supply chains and international trade networks. Most supply chains still rely on moving information stepwise up and down the supply chain one tier at a time. All too often, these information exchanges are delayed, inaccurate, or fail to take place at all. Thus, businesses and other organizations must make decisions based on incomplete, outdated, and inaccurate information. However, many industries are in the process of transitioning to blockchain-enabled supply ecosystems. With blockchain, every entity in the ecosystem can securely share the latest, most accurate data as soon as it is created via a common data pool. Everyone who is authorized to see the data can see it immediately, and no one unauthorized can post, change, or even see data they're not supposed to. For example, using a blockchain system like this, Walmart has been able to reduce the time needed to track the source and subsequent distribution of contaminated product, like romaine lettuce tainted with E. coli, from nearly a week to less than 2 seconds. And by incorporating blockchain-based smart contracts, business and social ecosystems can effectively integrate AI with the Internet of Things and other key emerging technologies. This is all very exciting in terms of enabling digital transformation. But none of this matters unless you have a broader, innovative planning process for anticipating and managing strategic disruptions. Strategic disruptions include pandemics, such as the global COVID-19 pandemic that we're all too familiar with. But they also include climate change. And if you think COVID-19 has been fun, wait until we start seeing the real impacts of climate change start kicking in over the next 5 to 10 years. Geopolitical disturbances like impulsive trade wars have already proven to be strategically disruptive for many industries. Finally, emerging technologies themselves like social media, AI, blockchain, 3D printing, and others can be strategically disruptive both economically and socially. As far as the current pandemic is concerned, most organizations have already started, as they should, by keeping their people healthy first. Their employees, management, customers, suppliers, and other stakeholders. By taking all recommended precautions and steps, albeit with far too many exceptions, most people will avoid COVID-19. But few businesses will avoid the economic impact. Businesses must determine their responses for the next 30, 60, and 90 days. What needs to be done regarding loans, furloughs, layoffs, restarting? They'll need flexible systems to execute those responses, and they'll need to continuously monitor the situation. But businesses also need to plan for the long term. Some claim that long-term planning is dead, that with unpredictable strategic disruptions like pandemics, all we can do is plan for the next 60 to 90 days and otherwise try our best to react to externalities. However, militaries have been dealing with these kinds of issues for centuries. A famous old military saying is, the first casualty of war is the plan. And that's true if we only think of traditional static strategic planning. You know, where we have a 2-week spasm of planning once a year, make a few minor tweaks, and then go on with business as usual until something like the COVID-19 pandemic comes along. But there's a better way. We've all heard the saying, think globally, act locally. With dynamic transformational planning, we also think long-term, act short-term. With dynamic transformational planning, we first identify high-level strategic goals needed to execute your overall plan, to leverage your core competencies, resources, and capabilities to meet changing needs. of the marketplace while addressing current and potential strategic threats and disruptions. We also develop plans. To accomplish any goal, you must have a plan. You can have more than one plan for a goal. For example, if your goal is to drive home from work, assuming you're still going to work these days, plan A could be take the expressway, and plan B could be take surface streets. Each plan has advantages and disadvantages, and you might choose to switch plans. For example, if there's an accident on the expressway, you could switch to take surface streets. To execute plans, you need to achieve sub-goals, that is, to ensure you have the necessary resources required. And to achieve those sub-goals, you need to execute sub-plans. Now, this all sounds very confusing verbally, but it can be readily visualized using a plan goal graph. Here's an example of a plan goal graph, where the overall dynamic transformation plan has top-level goals such as have technology, have revenue, potential pandemics addressed, and climate change addressed. As you can see, each of these goals has alternative sub-plans, which in turn are enabled by achieving various sub-goals. A real-world plan goal graph for an organization would typically run 5 to 10 layers deep. But with the right people involved, such a plan can be developed within a few days. A key component of dynamic transformational planning is to assign variables to balance the relative values of the goals and to measure the costs of executing the plans. It's also important to underestimate the likelihood of the plan's success. Using Bayesian reasoning, you can correctly factor in contingent probabilities. Not just what's the probability of this happening, but also if this does happen, then what's the probability of that happening? To select the best plan, it's important to monitor the circumstances closely. This is why people use tools like Waze to look at the traffic situation and alternatives. When selecting a plan, it's important to consider what's called least commitment planning. That is, other things equal, select the plan that allows you the greatest flexibility to shift plans if future circumstances require that, rather than one that may look desirable now, but locks you into a course of action that could prove to be undesirable in the near future. This is also why it's important that organizations actively monitor for potential strategic disruptions and threats, even if such strategic disruptions are not currently happening at a specific point in time. Just imagine if a country had a pandemic monitoring office in place and then dismantled it because there wasn't yet an active pandemic underway. Well, unfortunately, we don't have to imagine that. We are now all too familiar with the disastrous results. But businesses, too, can't afford to ignore potential strategic disruptions just because they haven't yet directly impacted them. In summary, with dynamic transformational planning, developing well thought through plans and goals, assessing contingent probabilities, and continuously monitoring for potential strategic disruptions, businesses can think long-term, setting strategic goals, while still having the flexibility to shift dynamically in the short term and medium term. This way, they can address both anticipated and unanticipated strategic contingencies, opportunities, threats, and disruptions. To survive and succeed in today's world and going forward, we'll have to change everything from the way we think, to the ways we manage our business processes, to our fundamental business models. That's a lot of change. But as the famed historian Henry Steele Commager said over a century ago, change does not necessarily assure progress, but progress implacably requires change. Thank you for listening. Please don't hesitate to reach out if I can answer any questions or be of help. And now one question you may have is, this all sounds great, Jack, but how do I pay for it? Which is exactly the topic that our next speaker, Pat Phelan from Rimini Street, will be addressing. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Yeah, that was just wonderful. You've set up a thoroughgoing conceptual framework for thinking about the challenges we're facing, and also describing some of the opportunities that are available to us if we get this right. You know, I'm so glad you mentioned the military along the way. I chaired an event like this about 2 weeks ago for executives across Western Europe And one of the speaker, the guy in your shoes at that event, Jack, was in the business of business continuity planning, disaster recovery. And he was explaining that ever since the pandemic has started, he's been in and out of more than 100 executive offices of big corporations. And he said he did not find a single company that was really ready for this, that had done the kind of planning you're talking about. He said the only people who were absolutely ready for this and were able to just turn a few switches and continue business as usual among his clients was the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, right? That's their business. It's nobody else's business. Right? Exactly. And they have a very interesting funding model as well. So anyway, a little anecdote. Anyway, Jack, thank you so much. Although you are leaving the stage now, please stick around, would you? And questions submitted for Jack can be entered under the questions tab right now. Also questions for Pat Phelan, our speaker, coming up in just a couple of seconds from now. Entered under the questions tab, and you'll either be answered immediately or they'll get back to you. All right. And participants tuned in, this is a good moment for me to remind you about the polls tab next to the questions tab. If you have not done so already, we're eager to have your response there as well. Next, let's welcome Pat Phelan, Vice President Research of Rimini Street. Pat provides quantitative and qualitative insights to guide Rimini Street in identifying opportunities where the company can most effectively address your need for more cost-effective information technology operations in your enterprise. Pat's 3 years with Rimini Street have coincided with an absolute explosion in Rimini Street's growth, as now nearly 3,500 companies have become Rimini Street clients. Pat Phelan, 18 years, a research vice president at Gartner before joining Rimini Street. Welcome, Pat.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I know you've pulled together some fascinating research on ERP spending inter alia to share with us. And so, well, I give you the floor without further ado. Please go ahead, Pat.
Thanks, Scott. I can't say that I can take credit for the explosion at Rimini Street, but I sure have been delighted to be a part of that growth.
Great.
Jack had mentioned an awful lot of change and investment that could be necessary for many companies to keep up and to excel and grow. And so what I'd like to cover a little bit is, so how do you get to that next level when we've got the kind of economic uncertainty that we're having today? We'll be having some forward-thinking statements and just a bit of a disclaimer that says, you know, those things could or could not happen. Just keep that in mind as we move forward. This is, you can see me. I did want to touch a bit on the state of the world. As Jack had mentioned, there's an awful lot of change happening, and some organizations are faced with persisting. How do I sustain and survive? And when a crisis like this comes up, we find that most organizations have not done disaster recovery planning enough, or even if they've planned, the plan is dusty and it doesn't apply in the current situation. So survival is critical and difficult for many. For those that are able to get out ahead of that, capturing the opportunity is where we're really seeing the entrepreneurs, the forward thinkers excel. Unfortunately, that can't happen without funding and resources to back it up. So what organizations are having to do is rethink what their status quo is. You know, what is normal for us now? What will differentiate us may not be what differentiated the company even a few short months ago. So keeping up, it used to be a certain goal, and now it may be a totally different one. So before you do your forward planning, look at what is going to be the new normal. Now, when you've got the situation like we're in right now, cash is king. If you don't have the cash to survive, you certainly won't have the cash to invest in growth and change. And organizations are rethinking their approach to IT right now. It's a knee-jerk reaction to say, oh, cut the budget by X%. And that's been a common mantra of reductions in economy over the years. Unfortunately, CIOs are faced with that today, along with the need to invest in digital transformation. Having a digital core is going to be key to being able to survive and thrive. And if you aren't already there, that's going to take money and resources and time in order to get there and get there quickly. So what organizations are doing is they're rethinking at the short-term tactical level, short-term strategic level, as well as the long-term. And you see on the screen here some things that organizations may take on. You know, you can clean house of all the things that are not adding value. Yes, that's a very short-term tactical approach. Or you can also choose to keep what's running well. We call that maintaining the legacy. That can be a short-term action or long-term, but the key here is that if it's a strategic move, it can form the anchor for funding and resourcing and applying project effort to the digital, the innovation, the transformational changes that you need to have. Another thing that's really critical right now is bulletproofing your infrastructure. You may find that the data center is, as a CEO, managing the data center is the least of your worries right now. So get that off your plate, move your infrastructure to as a service to the cloud, and let someone else deal with the heavy lifting of keeping the infrastructure running so you can focus on the changes that will bring value to the business and attend to business priorities. And then another strategic move is looking at the life cycle of your existing investments. I'll pick on ERP for a moment. You know, ERP is a long-winded, long-tailed investment. It may be that if that's running well enough for you, extending the life of that solution set and then focusing your change efforts on digital or innovation or meeting customer needs may be a better way to serve your business community. So look at things like these when you're trying to manage your existing IT environment in this tough time. Well, that's easy to say, but then if you are going to look ahead, where are CIOs planning to spend their resources? We looked at a survey here that showed that, and this came from Gartner, that showed that organizations pre-COVID, so this survey is pre-COVID, were focusing on things like data analytics, of course, digital transformation. Now, you look over here on the right-hand side and you see that these organizations are not spending money in their ERP environment. They're letting that just run as well, putting it on the back burner, keeping it going, and innovating around the edges. Now, post-COVID, we see that the green bar, the digital transformation bar, is taking on a much higher priority than the data analytics. Now, that may be short-lived, but at least for right now, through the end of this year, gaining or strengthening your company's digital core is going to be where we expect to see the most investment. So when you look at differentiating yourselves or growing or becoming a better competitor, it's absolutely hands down investing in digital is the way that we're seeing it happen. Well, that's easy to say too, but how do you fund something like that? Well, another survey we pulled results from showed that of the organizations that were surveyed, respondents in the 60% range said that they're going to try to extract more value out of their existing investments so they can redirect funds. Now, what that means is you may close down or retire solution sets, close down projects that are not high priority to the business, retire solutions that are not bringing a lot of business value, but taking your existing investments, and for almost every company out there, that's going to be ERP or something like your enterprise solutions, and finding ways to keep those things running for longer without a lot of change, because change is costly to them, so that you can redirect funds. Another thing we're seeing is that the movement to the cloud is probably still going to happen, at least through the end of this year. It may dampen down some because budgets are really tight, but there will still be movement to the cloud where it makes sense. Don't move something to the cloud just because it's the new platform. Move something to the cloud where it's going to save you money or improve your ability to reach customers and engage with them. So that kind of spend is where we're expecting to see it. Now, I want to touch on the bottom one here for just a minute because we're a little tight on time. We're seeing that cutting staff is
Go ahead, Pat. We can still hear you.
Ooh, goodness. Okay, now I can see you all. We are seeing that cutting staff is the absolute lowest priority right now because I think CIOs are pretty smart about the fact that the kind of skills that it takes to be an IT expert are not easily replaced, and it's costly to replace them. So there are many things you can do before you cut staff, and we encourage you to explore those. So with that in mind, then, what we're seeing is that organizations are really pressing now to take more control of their investment roadmaps over in IT. And even Gartner says this, that for Oracle, and this applies to SAP too, you should look at where you're spending money on those big back office enterprise solution sets. There may be a lot of value that can be squeezed out of there for you to repurpose. The obvious place to look is how much money you're paying these big vendors on maintenance fees every year. Most of these organizations, well, it's SAP and Oracle, mostly what they've got, if you've invested in their big flagship products, those products are very mature. They don't change much. People have been negotiated into spending somewhere upwards of 22 or more % per year on maintenance fees for something that's not really changing. That's an obvious place to go look first to see if you can either renegotiate or find another way to get maintenance on those solution sets, which is what Rimini Street does, and then look at those vendors' product roadmaps when it makes sense and will add business value. But if you look here, there are some number of things that you can do. Definitely look at your licensing and support contracts. Look at your security and compliance. Is that in line with where your risk is right now? Find ways, like we talked before, about refocusing IT staff from operations to creating some kind of new value. And then a couple of other things here. Look at your product entitlement inventory. Where are you spending on OpEx, CapEx, that you could shift that to the cloud and it would become OpEx, an expense as opposed to capital? So there are a number of areas where you can start to take control of your IT spending in a bigger way. And here are some strategies as well to help you become more resilient. Look at your total ERP support and operating costs. That's usually the lion's share of any IT budget. And for years, that's been sacrosanct. You couldn't get rid of it. You just paid it every year. This is the time to really challenge if you're getting what you're paying for there, especially the maintenance fees I mentioned before. Another thing you can do is leverage SaaS applications where it makes sense. And I talked about moving things to the cloud that are actually going to make an improvement in the business. Don't spend money right now on cloud projects unless they can move the business forward. So if they can move you forward, absolutely, that's your priority. And then finally, just a thought here, we are in situation unnormal. There is no status quo at this point. That's not an option. Are we still, can you still hear me?
Yes, can still hear you, Pat. Go ahead.
My system must be hiccuping. There we go. There is no status quo right now. You're either growing as a company or you're dying as a company. And so with the uncertainty that we've got, That's really throwing a wrench in things. But that's on top of all of the competition and disruption that's already happening. So this is an opportunity with a double whammy on companies right now to turn yourselves from just keeping up to an organization that's growing and taking market share. And the only way to do that from a technology standpoint is to find the funds somewhere. So if you are stretched over in IT, look for ways to move your money from sustainment operations so that you can take that set of resources and push them into growth activities, digital core activities, the things that are going to get you closer to your customers and help you engage and capture markets, retain the customers that you have. So with that, I think we are set to move back to Scott. Thank you so much, Scott.
Pat, thank you. That was really enlightening as you zeroed in on so many of the numbers and decision-making challenges that we all face. When you stick around, I want to ask you a question or two, if you don't mind.
Certainly.
Okay, good. Let me just mention, first of all, that polls tab is still open. If you haven't taken a look under the polls tab yet, please do and answer the poll that you'll see there. Okay, Pat, I think we can safely say that most IT departments are seeing an increase in demand now from the business units, from the business as a whole, just with the virus-related changes. And in some cases, these changes really have changed the way the businesses make money. It's changed the business model. So big new demands on IT. And then, well, ask any CFO these days, there's two kinds of businesses. Those that had enough money to see them through the pandemic and those that just didn't. A lot of businesses, even whole industries, are in serious financial trouble because of the virus. So A, you've got greater demands on IT, and B, you've got less money to do stuff in most industries. How does a CIO reconcile this situation?
Well, for some folks, there's always going to be a gap. But the thing that you need to do as a CIO is look at what's producing the revenue on the front end and make sure that that's lining up with the fact that you're spending money on the back end. So don't spend more than you can afford to at this point. Mm-hmm. Other part of that, and that's a very tricky balance, right? I mean, if you're told to cut your budget. The other thing to do here is this is the time for the CIO to become the superhero. Work very, very closely with your CFO, your other C-levels to find out what are the absolute business priorities so that you can then justify the shifting in funds over in IT that may be away from a pet project, but you can justify focusing resources on those top priorities. So the CIO becomes a very helpful partner in decision-making over where you're going to spend your money. And then, as we've seen in a number of cases, rethinking your, I'll call it system development methodology in the old language here, but the time to market, the time to deliver on technology, how you've done that in the past may have to be set in the corner for more agile, highly responsive, highly productive ways of getting those technology changes to the market faster. And by market, I mean customers or end users. It could be suppliers even. But the point here is that you've got to very aggressively look at where you're spending money and make sure that every dollar is tied to the business and that how you're actually delivering on your promises is very agile and nimble. And I suspect as we get into the later parts of this year, hopefully things will calm down with the pandemic. But as we get a chance to step back and away from the house fire and look at how we've been delivering projects, our whole project life cycle may change. And this may be the testing ground for how that new system development capability is really going to shape up. Is agile development really the way to go? Are there aspects of the old linear, tried and true, A plus B equals C sort of deployment methodology that are still necessary. So sometime later this year, I think there's going to be an exercise that organizations go through to say, now that we've got new normal, what does that look like over in IT?
Yeah.
Didn't answer, but there's a lot that will come out of that.
Great. It's a great answer, Pat. Thank you very much. This is a time when a lot of CIOs are thinking about the cloud. Some have been pushed into it before they really wanted to go there. Others are looking at the cloud in new ways, doing things differently just because of remote work. I'm wondering, for those of us who are still running some or all of their applications on-prem, is there enough cost savings to be found in moving applications to the cloud that one might say this is the time to act?
Well, if the cloud were, let's see, if there was parity in what the cloud offers and on premises, your internally non-cloud solutions provide, it might be. But unfortunately, there's a couple of barriers that will keep many organizations from ever moving everything to the cloud. Is it doesn't always cost less to run an application set in the cloud. You may have to customize it, just like you've got custom solutions internally. There are hidden fees like extra data reconciliations, extra backups. The second thing is that functional fit. When I talk about functional parity, some of the cloud products, and I tend to think ERP here, were designed for the one-to-many in mind. So as a unique requirement that some industries have, you may never have that requirement included in the cloud solution. So not only will cost be a barrier because it won't necessarily cost less, but ability to manage the business may be a barrier because the capability just don't cover what your requirement set is. Yep. And then I can keep going here, but those are the two big ones. And the big question people need to ask is, if I'm going to spend money right now, is it better spent on giving me something that will move the business forward, make me more competitive, get me closer to my customers? Or is it better to move something that's been running well in the back office, move it to the cloud just so my whole platform's on the cloud? That's an expensive lift. Move any kind of enterprise application to something else is typically millions of dollars if you're any size company at all. Very disruptive because the transactions are tightly integrated. I have to stop here. I'll keep going. But moving something like that where there's no business improvement, the cost and disruption of doing that move, just doing the move, there's no business case for it. Even though there may be an idea that says, oh, let's move everything to the cloud. Think about the cost and the value. The value just is not there for most organizations to move some of these big, complex solution sets to the cloud.
Right. Pat, let's not worry so much about the fact that time grows short. People are still tuned in. So let me ask you one more thing, if you don't mind. For those CIOs who are facing epical belt tightening, you've offered some valuable pointers, but I wonder if there's an overall strategy for setting priorities in this situation. An overall strategy, kind of a roadmap for CIOs who are wrestling with their budgets at a time like this. How to handle it.
Well, I was just going to use that word. The roadmap concept is something we talk about quite a bit. And we suggest that you take everything off the roadmap that isn't going to create some kind of business, achieve some kind of business priority. And I pick on ERP maintenance a lot. If you're spending money on an upgrade or you're trying to do enhancements with ERP, ask yourself, does that change how I'm delivering my business processes? So look at your roadmap. Anything that is going to quickly move the business forward, let's shove that earlier in the roadmap. Anything that is keeping up with regulatory compliance, and you may have to have, some of those kind of things you can't get rid of. But anything that's being externally driven, like your vendors telling you need to do something to remain current, you need to upgrade to remain current, you need to spend money on status quo, those kind of things we're shoving off the roadmap. And I'll tell you what we've seen from our clients is that can open up a substantial, I'm going to call it gap, but opportunity roadway for you to then plug in the kind of investments that are really going to make your CFO happy.
All right. Pat, great. I love the positive spirit of that response at a tough time. And really, it's a thrill to hear about the opportunities that are out there. So very grateful to you for sharing that. Jack Shaw, if you're still tuned in, you can click that little figure of a person and at least give us a chance to thank you and say bye-bye. Folks tuned in, thank you very much indeed. There's Jack. Thanks, Jack.
So much.
Thank you very much indeed for tuning in. We hope to see you on the next CIO Online. And of course, our biggest thanks of all to Rimini Street for making this meeting possible. So thanks to one and all, and we hope, as I said, to see you on the next CIO Online. Bye-bye for now.